Welcome, friends. Hey, instructional designers in offices, drinking coffee. Happy New Year. I think we're just going to say it the one time. I know it's getting kind of late in the year, but hey, it's our first time getting together since the calendar flipped over. Hope everyone had a good holiday season. Quick reminder, instructional designers in offices, drinking coffee. It's brought to you by the team here at Domino. Paul and I are both team members here. Domino, where we work to empower L&D teams to develop, manage, and deliver impactful learning at scale. Hey, gang, we have a first-time guest with us here. Giswende Ruamba is joining us today. Giswende, you've put out a new book. And so maybe tell us a little bit about the name and the title of the book, and then we'll jump into what it's all about.
Yes, the new book that came up is the Instructional Designer's Guide to Project Management. And the reason why I wrote the book, the short version, is because I made so many mistakes as an instructional designer in the past. And I was like, okay, there should be a better way to do things, right? And one day, one of my friend, Michael Tingry, a very smart guy, told me, hey, guess one day you need to look into project management. I'm like, nah, I already have the ID model. There's so many theories. I don't need anything else, right? And I've been doing it, and it's been working kind of well. And one day I'm like, okay, let me double check that project management thing. And wow, it was like eye opening for me because I'm like, why I didn't know this before. I had a master's and PhD, right? And my PhD is in instructional design and technology, but I never took a single course on project management. Usually we think that project management is for people in the business sector, right? It's taught in business school, but not in education in general. I mean, like some school have certificates, some courses on project management, but they're not really tailored to instructional design. So that's what made me think about, okay, I need to write a book to share my experience, and then hopefully other people are not going to make the same mistake I made, and then grow a community where we can support each other and try to design better courses, and especially also avoid burnout. If we don't have good project management principles and we don't have good processes, it can lead to burnout.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned learning from experience. I think we've all had experiences with projects in the instructional design world that haven't gone too well. Are you willing to share with us an example of a project that made you think, maybe I need to get some better project management?
I mean, there are so many of them. One of them that comes to my mind is recently I was brought in as a consultant to work on a project. Everyone was invested in the project, right? So the goal of the project was to transition a set of courses from traditional training, like face to face, to online. Money was not a problem. We already had the content. The CEO was really invested because he was the project sponsor. So what I did was like, oh, we have everything. Let's jump in and then start designing. We work around the learning goals, the assessments, all the good things that goes around making a good course. And we even got a very expensive learning management system. But I quickly realized that it was a lot of work. And people starting to complain. And then the CEO one day told me, guess when we're going to shut this project? It's not going to work out. And after reflection and after looking at project management principle and those things, I think I made two big mistakes. The first one, I didn't plan. I had no idea what planning was, and especially planning capacity. Right? I underestimated the amount required um, to do the project. I'm pretty sure there are some framework or some people are specialized, like who are really specialized in capacity planning. I'm not gonna go in that route, I'm not an expert. But now when I have a project, I try to plan and then over plan. Right? And especially capacity, I don't underestimate my capacity. Secondly, the biggest mistake was that I didn't see his vision, like the CEO vision for the course. Because at the end, he told me actually what he wanted was him teaching live to everyone and people joining, right, and asking questions. But for me, I thought about like a synchronous learning, something on the LMS, right? That will live there and then people will go self-paced and take the course. So for that reason, I think that is the main reason why he closed the project, because it didn't align with his vision. So another key lesson for me today, when I'm working on a project, at the end of the project, the beginning of the project, one thing I always ask is, what does success look like for you? What's your vision?
Hmm.
If I don't have that, it can be a recipe for failure.
Yeah, e-learning is such a broad thing for so many people, and we hear it with a particular context of how we've thought about things in the past. Sometimes people, all they want is a PowerPoint and some test questions, and sometimes they want something that's actually a massive online game. You definitely need to suss those things out. Yeah.
And the vision you talked about reminded me of a case when I was managing a team, and the instructional designer was assigned to create training about our product, our learning management system, to get people on board. She had a very clear vision of what she thought they needed, and what was involved in, and some humor and some other things there.
Mhm.
The stakeholder, the VP who was responsible for this, made the mistake of not really interviewing them, or I
Mm.
think she did interview them once, but not really perhaps listening them or sussing out exactly what was needed. Sometimes people say, "Well, I trust your vision," but you shouldn't trust that. You need to understand what their vision is, or present them examples. Maybe they don't have ideas to it, because she ended up presenting a project storyboarded, half done, and I was calling that it was a disaster, that she had to be kicked off that project.
Yes, yes.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very ouch on mine, because I also made the mistake of trusting my ID that they were doing some of those key things that you talked about, and understanding the stakeholders' vision, which
Yeah.
many times is missed, because sometimes stakeholders put a faith in you and your organization,
Mhm.
but that's also partly because they need some help fleshing out their vision. And going into a project, there's many ways to do it. And yeah, if you aren't meeting them and their needs as well as what their audience is,
Mhm.
then you got to meet both sides.
Yeah. I like your point. The first one is stakeholders. I made a lot of mistake with stakeholders. Like one day I designed a course with a subject matter expert, and the subject matter expert was reporting to a chair for department, right? And then we didn't double check with the chair like throughout the design. So we just went, worked for like 4 or 5 months on the course. And then at the end, send the course to the chair. Here's the course, it's done. And then the chair was like, no, that's not what I wanted. Because what she wanted was to use a publisher on the course. But what we did everything in house, recording all the videos, and it was tedious. And we spent a lot of time and money doing that. So it was like, nope, this is not going to work.
Hmm.
Tough.
Yeah, we
So,
forget there's multiple stakeholders
yes.
involved, not just the obvious one. The SME is another one. Sometimes people ignore that stakeholder. Or you talked about the resources, and you don't plan for the resources, that and those SMEs, their time, and we always hear, "Oh, their time is valuable," but literally they have so maybe they have interest in it. Maybe you're lucky that they're interested in working with you, but they're so busy and called on so many different areas.
So the stories that we've been sharing here, something that occurs to me is that, I mean, we're talking project management, but ultimately, all of these conversations so far have been about people management, really.
Yeah,
You
tell us
know,
a little bit of where people management and project management, I know from my experience, they do overlap quite a bit, but that's not as
Yeah,
obvious necessarily.
100%. I
and
mean,
and
like,
we're people too.
Yeah.
Those of us trying to run a
right?
project, we're in the people management too. So we're
Y-
under that umbrella. So I'm
Yes,
not blaming others, is what I'm saying.
yes, yes, yeah. I was in a meeting recently, and one of the senior project manager told me, it is not project management, it is people management. I'm like, wow, this is true. Because most of the time we kind of working with people. I don't want to use the term managing people, but we're working with other people and human relationships. I mean, if we're not able to build that, sometimes the project is not gonna really fly. I mean, in my book, I talk about the human side of project management. That is the 50% of my book is about that, right? Because I realize that for instructional designers, we can have the best tools, but if we don't work on the human element, the project is not gonna work. And in my book, I talk about 3 ego states, right? I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna go quickly, but if you read the book, you will get everything. And this was eye-opening for me. The 3 ego state was created by a guy called Eric Berney in 1964. And he called it the transactional framework analysis. And the transactional framework analysis says that we navigate between the parent ego state, the child ego state, and the adult ego state when we're working with others. And the parent ego state is when we are acting as a parent, like authority, rule, guidance, like we're talking to a child, go clean up your room. So this is the parent ego state. The other one is the child ego state. It's when we're communicating as a child, right? We're not controlling our emotions, like we can be rebellious, like throwing tantrums, right? Uh, let's picture a child saying like, oh, today I'm not going to clean up my room. So this is the child ego state. And then the last one is the adult ego state, where we kind of controlling our emotions. We're being rational and trying to solve a problem. I kind of overcharacterize it, but in reality, that's what we see in our work environment, right? So, or when we work on project, we can sometimes act as a parent, trying to guide with authority, or we can act as a child. I'm not going to say like, I'm not going to do this project. This is for someone else. I don't care, right? Like rebellious, or we can act like as an adult, right? Staying in that zone of responsibility, respecting others, trying to solve the problem. So when we're able to see those 3 ego states, and then when we're in meetings, we need to check our egos because when we don't do that, it can easily derail the project.
That made me think of a couple of things there. One, some of us who have been instructional designers have been fortunate enough to actually have project managers, and even better if that project manager has a lot of experience with managing training projects. But a lot of times, as you've noted, and probably why you wrote this book, is instructional designers don't have the luxury of having that project manager, and they're being brought into that role. And I'm thinking about, especially in the last 15 years, a lot of instructional designers coming into it, they're developing self-paced content and they're working with people, but you're working on your own a lot as opposed to back in the heyday when they were all trainers and they were used to working with people, which is a little bit different than switching to some of this stuff. Thinking that just from managing the scope to managing in there, we all have our own egos, what we love, and coming into there. When you said that, it reminded me of a couple of really good project managers I worked with who was good because they were not only managing themselves, but everyone else came in with their own ego child behaviors, just like you described there. And they were managing that and trying to bring everyone into the balance. So, thinking about that, what are some of the things that in your book or things that people can do when they're either thrust into this role or they're finding they're in this role all the time? And this is an area where they're challenged or it's creating challenges.
Yeah. So in my book, one of the most important thing I talk about is the planning document. So going back to our early discussion, we instructional designers usually don't take time to plan. Like we love design, and then the CEO or leadership says it's an issue, right? Instructional designers develop a training, and then we just like jump into it and then start designing the training. But actually, we need to spend a lot of time in the planning stage, and that's the reason why the military created the PADI model. they added a P to the ADDIE model to be PADDI because we're missing the planning stage in the ADDIE. And the planning stage involved, for me, 8 elements. So I'm going to go through them really quickly. The first one is we need to identify the goal of the project, the vision. We need to identify the stakeholders. We already talked about that. Deliverables, right? What are the elements of the end product? Acceptance criteria. What does success look like? Exclusions. This one is very important because what are the things we are not going to do? Sometimes we don't think about that. And we just go to the meetings and everyone brings ideas left and right. And then we're trying to accomplish all these ideas. But no, we can't do everything. So exclusion, what are the things we're not going to do? For example, we're not going to hire a contractor. Right? It has to be clear for everyone. Timeline, this is easy. Everyone knows what timeline is.
It's easy to have a date in the timeline. It's not easy to get there.
Hence the reason for these planning items.
100%. I said easy, right? But it's one of the most difficult one because there are a lot of biases that goes into timeline, right? We have the group thinking, for example, bias in timeline, where we are part of a group and everyone say like, oh, we can get it done by January, end of January. And you're like, okay, right? That's group thinking, right? Or there are other biases like we can overcommit, right? So it'd be like, I know I can get it done by that time, right? Overcommitting. So there are so many biases that makes that the timeline is very difficult to estimate. Anyway, so the other element is budget. How much money are we allocating to the project? And is there any wiggle room? Lastly, constraints. This is very important. What are the constraints in terms of resources, in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of technology? These are the 8 elements. When we have those, we spend time planning those 8 elements. Usually the project can succeed.
Thinking about some of those constraints, and at DevLearn, I saw some good presentations and they talked about how they had these ideas and they just made it happen. But it's very clearly some of these instructional designers were working 80-hour weeks would be common for the last couple weeks trying to make it happen. And you talk about constraints is sometimes when you go to do something new, you have to recognize I haven't done this before. I don't have an idea of how long it's going to go ahead and take this particular and breaking it down in those pieces and then maybe doing a little bit more research ahead of time to at least get a narrower unknown into, hey, it's going to be within this, or break it down into those pieces.
Mhm.
'Cause, yeah, those can really balloon the project. Or if you have somebody who, heaven forbid, can't go ahead and be crazy amount of time, the project could fail completely because it could be a critical point.
Yep, 100%. Yes. So to reiterate what I was saying, I spend a lot of time now in the planning and also trying to know my subject matter expert and the people I'm working with and build that relationship. I noticed, for example, last time I was working on a course with a faculty because I built that relationship with the faculty was okay telling me that, hey, guess when they actually, this timeline is not going to work for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. When people say I'm gonna be honest with you, means like okay, they're really opening their heart, right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let me. It's like okay, I got this. I've got a conference coming. I got this and my teaching load. So really, I mean, we have to renegotiate the timeline. I'm like, that's great. Thank you for letting me know. And
Mhm.
then we kind of rearrange that. But if we don't really build that relationship and try to understand people and work with them, it can be difficult down the road.
It's funny how folks are almost never use the phrase, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to work all the time on this, right? Like it's always a hold on a moment.
On that, laying out that plan, part of it is to lay out the plan, but you're also helping all your back to the people, helping them plan
Yeah.
and provide that feedback, just like Chris said about what's realistically. And because if it's not really planned out, it may seem that they may not be breaking out the pieces. You think, of course they were. They're responsible for that. Well, no, they're thinking about other things probably they're doing. And now, one thing
Yeah.
I saw with one of my project managers, I think you probably talk about this, you talked about it there, is the importance of writing that stuff down, spelling it out, and continually doing that. every meeting having meeting notes about what was decided in there, who's responsible for those tasks and moving that along and helping continually reinforcing that. Because I'm sure no one here has ever had anybody send an email and then find out later they only read the first line. But
Yeah, you make a very good point. I usually try to have weekly meetings with the people I'm working with, the team, and then the subject matter expert. Sometimes we'll cancel it because there's nothing to talk about. But having that recurrent meeting kind of create a rhythm and then a checking. If not, if we don't check, people get busy and then they have a project that they're working on. But when we meet, it can be like, okay, what are the roadblocks or what can we do to keep on moving? And is everything going well? So three simple items, and then we check in and then we try to collaborate with each other and help each other and keep on going. Another thing in my book and researching is neuroscience linked to instructional design, right? This is eye-opening also for me because there is a book where the person, I forgot the name, but the person is talking about how our brain reacts to threat. And she said the brainstem is responsible for survival. If we see a lion, our brainstem would tell us, gotta run, or you can freeze, or you gotta fight. But that same like environmental threat is also the same in offices. When people feel threatened, they're gonna either fight, flight, or freeze. So when sometimes in meetings we notice that some people we kind of like shut down, or I always will ask myself why the person changed like from the beginning. Like beginning was exciting, and now I don't hear that person anymore. What happened, right? Maybe it was like kind of some status, like the person lost or the person is overwhelmed. There is a threat that happened somewhere to trigger that person to change behavior. So it's important that we look at that psychological aspect, right, of human when we're working on project.
when you talked about having the regular meeting and then, of course, sometimes canceling it, that rhythm, as you said, it also starts to foster the getting to know the team being comfortable to
Mhm.
maybe go ahead and say things or comfortable enough to recognize that, oh, this is not them being quiet because it's a slow morning. This is them a different quiet, or this is not them being upset at me. This is them being upset because all of a sudden they realize meeting those goals are going to be very hard because something else was dumped on them or something. And if you're not having those meetings, I think you have a lot less people that would be sharing that. And then you get the worst thing that happens, I think, with project management are surprises.
Ooh, yep. We gotta avoid surprises, and especially when someone like 2 days before the end of the project come and say like, "I couldn't do my part." Like that breaks my heart, and that means like me, if I'm leading the project, I didn't do a good job because I should be able to know and anticipate surprises, right? Means like to your point again, we're not having those regular meetings, or unless I wouldn't say you're lying, but I should be able to see what you're producing to see like if we're going on the right track. But if someone comes at the end and say that we can't do that, it means like we didn't manage the project or the human aspect really well.
Now, I know that some of these people coming into this surprise that they're having to manage a project, or they're realizing that there should have been someone managing the project afterwards. This may be very new to them. And of course, we have our friend AI out there that can help generate some things that help us out there. In your book, do you provide some examples of like what goes into a scoping document or into meeting minutes? I know through trial and error, my scoping documents became better and better when this problem happened and it wasn't covered in the scope, or the stakeholders weren't involved, or the notes didn't have the action items and follow up on the follow meeting. So,
And, and I tend also to think the scoping document is kind of a living document, something that evolves. Because sometimes we try to make it as perfect at the beginning, but it will never be perfect, right? when we start the project, it's kind of like a guardrail, right, to help us. But as we move along, there may be some discussion that will make us revisit the scoping document. And it's important for us when those discussions happen that we take time to update the scoping document too. Because if not, what happened? So and so said this, and then we're trying to figure out what happened and what we need to do. But if we update the scoping document regularly, if we do a scope discovery, for example, we realize that instead of 4 modules, we need 6 modules because we need more content. We need to go back and update the scoping document. Right? That's a scope discovery, which is not bad. Right? What we need to avoid is scope creep, and in that sense, when we add things that doesn't really have value, right? Uh-huh.
It's almost like you said, the scope creep is almost like the undocumented and not necessarily everyone bought in to that
Yep.
change to where you're saying, "Hey, this is a change. What are the factors coming into this? Let's document it." It's also important, I know for some of my better projects, we had at the end of the project a kind of review of what went right, what went wrong, what should we go ahead and do to improve. I think is I don't know if you talk about that in your book. To me, that was a real eye opener and a big improvement to our process and overall improvement to success.
Yes, 100%. Two things about the closing of the process. I was talking to one of my friends, and he was dreading going to the course closeout debrief meeting and I was like, "What's going on?" It's like, it's going to be a blame game. I'm like, oh no. So that when we're closing, like to your point, it should be a celebration, right? To some extent, that we accomplished something, even if we didn't finish. What did we learn from that in terms of process, in terms of ourselves working on the project, in terms of collaborating with others? There's always a silver lining. There's something that we learn that can make us better. And on the other side, it's just great to go and then be like, okay, take a deep breath. Right, everything is done. Let's pop the champagne a little bit if it was successful, and then one of the other element is closing the documents. Right, because sometimes at the end we are tired that all like the documents are everywhere. Like the media team has the asset somewhere. I have my instructional designer asset somewhere. So how do we put all of this together? Right, if there's an issue down the road, people know where to find things. And it's not always easy to put all these things together. I mean, we need to collaborate and come with a system allowing us to do that. But it's so important, to your point, to close the project really well and learn from what went well and what didn't go well.
Mhm.
On that summary of bringing it in and as a project manager, setting the stage, this is not a blame game. This is hey, we accomplished this goal and how can we improve later so it's even smoother and better for us? Because I don't know, courses are never updated, right? And they're always by the same people, right?
Yes,
Coming back
yes.
in. It's almost like it'd be good, Chris, if you had some kind of learning content system where you can manage everything in
Something.
a central repository.
Something like that, yeah. The closing up, when it becomes a blame game, that's a pretty good example of people acting probably mostly as children.
Yeah.
Not being adults through the whole process potentially,
Yeah.
or the parental-minded egos not seeing the things that they wanted. So it comes back to that framework that you were describing too in a lot of cases.
Yep.
One of those people, like you said, that person that was dreading going to it. I mean, if a project didn't go well or through your meetings, you're seeing a little bit of that blame or some of those
Mhm.
adult child, it seems to me that maybe having a talk with everyone prior to it to get a gut check on that so you can be a little more prepared. Maybe you thought it went well, but going into it and helping set the stage again, managing the
Yeah.
people. Because ultimately we want to get the best out of everyone and we want their contribution, not their frustration.
Yeah.
Hey, if we done this differently, that wouldn't have been as frustrating. It still would have been challenging, perhaps, but
You make a very good point. I want to share another example about frustration and egos and blame. So I was working on a project with another instructional designer. We couldn't work together with the other instructional designer for some reasons. I mean, I tried everything. And one thing I noticed is that she was kind of in the parent ego state because she was senior instructional designer. I mean, she had more experience than me, and she wanted to dictate everything. And I'm a new instructional designer, so I want to prove myself. So I noticed that while she was in that parent state, I was also in the child ego state, right? Because I went and told my boss, like, oh, there's no way I'm going to work with her. I'm going to quit that project. Like a child throwing a tantrum, I'm going to quit. And then my boss was like, no, you got to do your best to try to finish this project. We don't have anyone else. You guys have to work it out. So I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I kind of like, okay, I'm going to focus on the design. I'm going to focus on, and then we're going to get it done. And when I was in that zone of focusing on the problem and trying to get it done, I kind of switched to adult without knowing adult ego state. And in that ego state, I realized that actually our differences, like working, was based on design. I like minimalistic design, like short. If you look at my book, it's really short, simple. Right? She likes lengthy designs. There's nothing wrong with them, right? So some people like to read a lot. So that was the difference between me and her. So what I did is like, okay, let's have a conversation about that. I like things simple, right? It looks like you like things that are a little lengthy. So how can we work it out? And then we're able to collaborate and then get the project done. If I stayed in that child ego state, I don't think we would have got the project done.
Well, and it made me think as you're talking about that, was there a project manager involved into that project or somebody in that role? And was there a scope set? Because I think some of those would have been teased out. Yeah.
No,
Done that
Yeah.
and they still would have been issues, but they would have been front and center. And it wouldn't have taken somebody to go, your boss to go, you're doing it and you figure it out.
that's
Yeah.
a very good.
You deciding that you were going to figure it out.
Yes, that's a very good point because now I'm thinking about it. We didn't have a planning document. We're like, okay, this is what we're trying to do. Just go do it. And we like jump to design. Like, okay, let's put the information together. Let's jump in on the LMS and do those things. And no planning, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. It sounds like in the planning step of the vision includes not just the higher ups, but also the other folks at your own level too, to make sure that we all understand what each other has pictured in mind. Paul mentioned the AI word earlier, and we are certainly in a world where lots of things are shifting and changing. Are there things about project management that we need to consider around AI specifically, and or are there things that we can use where AI can play a role in the process differently for us than we might have in the past?
Yeah. I mean, it's a game changer in every sector, and project management is part of it. People use AI now to have better scoping document and also speed up the process, like the scoping doc, because what used to take like 2 days for scoping document can be done like in a few minutes, and then we can reiterate on that. I saw people also putting all the timelines from somewhere to be able to estimate how much it takes to design a course. So they have a repository where they put all the timelines and asking AI to kind of go and then predict and do those things. I mean, like, there's so many cool things. I see some people in the media team also when they record a faculty and then there is a mistake that the faculty made on a word. Instead of bringing the faculty back into the studio, what they do, they just clone the faculty with AI and then change that little part. It helps speed up the whole process in terms of design. But what I find is that AI amplifies everything. When I say everything means the good and the bad. So if we have good processes, like the goals, the workflow, the deliverables are well done, the output will be nice, will be fast, and then will be efficient. But on the other side, if we have a clear goal and clear processes and we put that into AI, it's going to speed up the chaos and everything will be misaligned and then faster. So there's that saying that garbage in, garbage out, right? But in this time, it will be 10 times garbage out because of.
And even faster than before.
Yeah,
It's really pretty garbage and it sounds good.
yes, that's the problem.
And
with
that one of
AI.
the biggest problems I find is that somebody reads it and if they don't know what went on in that meeting or whatever else, it sounds really good. And you read it, it's like, yeah, it sounds really good. They're an excellent liar or they're excellent bullshitters. Excuse my language, but Yeah.
Yes, I like that what you said because I was listening to someone last time break down actually that AI doesn't think but predicts the next word. And it makes it look so nice because it just what's the likelihood of having the next word to be so and so. And AI will predict that and just add those. So to your point, when we read AI, it looks so good. But if we don't really step back and think about what we're reading, it can be problematic.
Thinking of the AI, the most common one would be I just think of the things that are a little more tedious. Hey, taking notes during the meeting, having actions item after that and summary. And AI does that. So I'm thinking, well, some people are going, hey, it does that. It's automatically emailing everybody. I'm done, which is not the project manager to should be looking at that, confirming that is accurate, maybe summarizing and saying, hey, these are the notes. This is assigned to Jack and Chris and Sally and whoever there. And then at the next meeting, making sure we review that. I was not going to tell you to do that.
Yes.
Although if you ask it and feed it in, it will probably give you some good suggestions
Mhm.
how you should run your meeting next time. But I think sometimes we get into, I didn't want to do it and now it makes it easy. So I don't have to do it. No, it's making it easier for you to actually still do it.
Absolutely. I don't know if the people attending or will be listening to this one saw the recent release of Cursor Cowork. Cursor
Mm,
just released, I saw someone make a demonstration where they use Cursor to draft a LinkedIn post and then tell Cursor to go and LinkedIn and post on their behalf. So AI write 20 LinkedIn posts for me and then just post them like once a day. But if they don't take time to read, that's going to be problematic because we can't trust something that predicts the next word all the time.
Mhm.
You tend to maybe lose your voice, even though it's trying to predict your voice perhaps after a while.
Yes, absolutely. I think the AI for me gonna amplify the human need to have kind of, I would say, humanity in our work because people will be looking for that personal touch now. Because sometimes when you see AI do something, we can say, this is AI, compared to when someone does it and we can see sometimes typos in it. So people,
Would you tell AI to include a couple of typos?
The cool thing is then it looks real.
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
um,
are there any typos anymore? Because they're getting better at just, hey, AI will actually be good dictator. I mean, the
Yes.
improvements over the dictate for people who are not using the keyboard. Now it's, hey, anybody can not use a keyboard and feel like they're getting their just out of it.
yeah. We've dropped a link to your book into the chat if folks are joining us in the live mode, and hopefully lots of folks will check that out. Just as a bit of a wrap up, a bit of parting thoughts. We've talked about the transactional, sorry, I've lost the word,
Analysis framework.
analysis framework. You mentioned you've got a lot of focus on that. And we've talked about the people, if you could leave people like, what's your number one thing? Like, hey, this is the thing. And it could even be something we've already talked about a bit, but what's the first or the most important thing you want people to understand coming out of our time here today?
I will say that bring your heart in every project you work on. That's it. I mean, like, if we are working on a project and if you want to work on it, say yes. And when you say yes, just bring your heart. Be open. It's not going to be perfect. But if you bring your energy, your heart, your commitment, you will enjoy it.
Hmm.
And if you don't want to work on project, just say, I don't feel like I like this project. Recently, I just said that to one of my senior leadership. Like,
And after you bring your heart in, make sure you read that book and provide a framework so your heart's not destroyed by the end of the project.
That's true.
that's true. Yes, 100%. Yes. So, yeah, bring your heart and then just connect with the other people. Connection is so important, not superficial, trying to know people, trying to be positive. I mean, we need all of that right now.
That's so true. I think about the best projects that I worked on.
Mhm.
The people really liked each other. They hung out.
Yeah.
They sometimes went to karaoke afterwards or other things like that because they enjoyed each other. As they say, laughter Heart is infectious.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially in instructional design, when we work with contractors, like someone hires us to do a work, we want to provide them with the best experience so that later on they'll be like, oh, yes, I want to work with those people again because it was such a great experience. People don't remember mistakes, but they remember experiences more than anything.
It's a
If
big
we
difference between a project I'm really proud of and one that
Yeah.
was difficult to get there and one that I was like proud of. It's difficult to get there, but I enjoyed problem solving, working with that person or persons on there. You're
Mhm.
right. Definitely like no brainer go back to them if it's that. And then if it's good but hard, I'm like, eh. I mean, I know I'll get good results, but I want to go through that again.
Mhm. Bring Your Heart sounds very much like a different way of also thinking about that adult ego in the
Mhm.
project. We might think of Bring Your Heart as something emotional, etc., but it does help us remind ourselves that it's about authenticity and it's about being,
Ooh.
working
Connected.
working like adults and connecting with each other. Guswende, thank you so much for joining us here this week. This has been a fabulous conversation. Really thoroughly
you.
enjoyed it. We dropped a note in the chat for the book. If folks are listening to us in the audio version, they can, of course, pretty quickly track it down, I'm sure. Looking forward to having folks bring that up and discuss that. I'm sure they can find you on LinkedIn and those sorts of places.
And what was the
soon.
name of the book again?
The Instructional Designer's Guide to Project Management.
There we go.
It's a really short 150 pages. I like minimalistic design, so it's really
Hey.
short.
Just to make things happen.
Yeah.
Hey, that smallness should also reduce the barrier to entry. Folks are going to look at it and go, I can get
Yeah.
through that one.
Yeah.
Very awesome. Well, gang, it is time to dance on out of here. Don't forget, this episode of Instructional Designers and Offices Drinking Coffee, like every time we get together in this format, is brought to you by the Domino team here, empowering L&D teams to develop, manage, and deliver impactful learning content at scale. Hey, we look forward to catching up with everybody in a couple of weeks' time for our next episode. Thanks so much, folks.